Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now, and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome. We are so pleased that you have joined us. It is here that we will uncover if my guest has had extraordinary discoveries in her life. The theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by John Park Wheeler. My guest today is Carol Kammermer, internationally recognized personal branding expert, professional speaker, and author of the award-winning book LinkedIn for the Savvy Executive, now available in its second edition. Prior to her focus on LinkedIn and personal branding, she was a marketing communications consultant for 20 years with a Fortune 500 medical device company. Since 2011, Carol has focused her communications expertise on helping C-suite executives and senior leaders use LinkedIn powerfully, creating positioning and messaging that reflects their business passion with authenticity. Join me in welcoming Carol Kammermer, who is joining us today from Hawaii. Hello, Carol.
Hello, Rhonda. I'm so glad to be with you today.
Thank you. Currently, LinkedIn for the Savvy Executive is now available in its second edition. Why did you write the award-winning first edition, and how long did it take you?
Okay, Rhonda, the first time I wrote my book, it was because I was so aware that my one-on-one coaching was serving the people that I got to visit with very, very well. But everybody needs LinkedIn help. And I needed a bigger platform. And so I decided to write my book and also to become a member of the National Speakers Association and to proclaim some of the truisms about LinkedIn to a wider audience.
Wonderful.
And you asked me how long it took to write. And the answer is that from the first challenge issued by a friend of mine to write a book until the day of my book launch was 1 year.
So what significant changes did you make in your second edition, Carol?
The first thing that I did was to catch up all the terminology, because LinkedIn changes its terminology, changes the way its functionality is rolled out all the time. And so I needed to be current. So that happened. But the most important thing that I did was to recognize that people who are in job transition have some different questions that other people don't have, and they deserve to have their questions answered. So I added a whole chapter for executives in transition, and there's a new section for people who are 50 or over, because ageism is alive and well. The other thing that I added was action points, action steps at the end of each chapter, so that by the time you're done reading the book, you've done a huge amount of work on your profile and it's ready to go.
That's exciting. It's a one-stop shop then.
I think so. It's interesting. It's not exactly the same as if I wrote it for you, but if I wrote your profile for you, but if you can write about yourself, you will have done all the steps. And also, there's a lot about how do we use the platform to achieve our goals. For instance, becoming more influential and having more presence on the platform. And even when we express our thought leadership, we have the opportunity to draw those employees that might be just the perfect people to us, or our next clients.
Right. It's a great resource for that, for sure. What are the mistakes that you see people make on their LinkedIn profile?
Well, the number one mistake is not taking LinkedIn seriously. So people who just slapdash put a few things up there and call it a profile really miss the opportunity to express their brand with power. I see people who are willing to go with a snapshot that's hurriedly taken by a friend that kind of looks like you, but really is not flattering. People who just answer with short sentences or bullet points, and who are missing the power of the search engine because they're not feeding the search engine with their keywords effectively. So I think the number one mistake is just not recognizing that it is your personal brand 24/7, available to everyone.
And so, how do people accent their keywords in LinkedIn, Carol?
Well, first you have to do a little soul searching about what your keywords are. And keywords are just the words that people would use in a search to find people just like you. So I always suggest that one of the things that people do to prepare to give their LinkedIn an overhaul is to write down some of their keywords and then, maybe put a star by the ones that are the absolute most important, because we want to have those words show up repeatedly in our text, not in a way that sounds mechanical, but a way that is authentic to us. When we talk about what we're passionate about in the world of work, our keywords just normally flow from us, just naturally. The skills section is another area where we get to emphasize our keywords because all skills are keywords.
So, when you talk about cultivating connections on LinkedIn, what do you mean and how can we do that?
Okay, it is just as though you've met a new friend in person. And as you are trying to nudge that person toward friendship as opposed to just acquaintanceship, you might show them a little attention. On LinkedIn, there are so many ways to express that attention. We can like and comment on things that they post. That's an expression of attention. We can endorse them for a few of their skills, another source of attention. And my very favorite thing is to send them an article that I know is on brand for them, with a note that says, this article came across my feed today and it reminded me of you. I think when we go out of our way to make connections like that, to have those little touch points, we nurture someone from acquaintanceship to friendship.
Yes, that's wonderful. How much time should a person spend on LinkedIn cultivating and grooming and talking with people? Like, what's a normal amount of time that a person should spend on it?
Well, I think it does depend on your goals and what you are trying to achieve through LinkedIn. But 15 minutes a day, I think, is kind of a starting point. And it's enough time to see the notifications that LinkedIn has sent to you and decide whether you need to respond to any of them with a personalized note of congratulations to someone, for instance. It's enough time to skim through the first couple of scrolls of your homepage feed. It's enough time to go back through your calendar and find someone that you met recently that you haven't reached out to connect. So if we had a practice of just 15 minutes a day, you'd have enough time to make an impact, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me this, Carol, if I receive an invitation into my LinkedIn and I know that the invitation has went out to all executives in C-suite, for instance, is there an etiquette that I should respond to that and say, yes, I'll be there, whatever the event, these little events that we attend. And if I can't attend, should I say I'm not going to be able to attend that? Like, what is the etiquette around that?
Okay, so you're talking about being invited to an event.
Yes.
And quite frankly, I don't think that we are required to respond. You know that invitation has gone out to 1,000 people, and the person who sent it is not the person whose event it really is. And
yes.
So I don't take time to respond to every invitation like that. But if it is someone who is having an event and it's rare for them to have an event, for instance, I have friends who have book launches. If they invite me to their book launch via LinkedIn, I do respond because I already have a personal connection with that person. And I know that the launch is near and dear to their heart. Any author understands what other authors have been through to get their book to the point of a launch. And so that requires a response. But if it's just from an organization and the person who is receiving the responses is not someone with whom you have a personal relationship, I don't think you need to respond.
Okay, well, that really makes me feel good that I don't have to respond because it cuts down.
There's so many.
Yeah, and because then I can spend time doing things that I want to attend to first on my LinkedIn profile, and I don't have to worry about responding to invitations. So that's really good to know, because a lot of people might not know that there's etiquette around that, whether people are waiting for you to respond because they have a checklist of who's attending and who's not. But it makes sense that, yes, if it's special, like a book launch, the person, then you would want to respond to that.
Right.
What are some of the new features on LinkedIn that we should be taking advantage of to amplify our brand?
Oh, my favorite is the featured section. And the featured section is a very visual section. It is a place for us to put pictures and video and posts that have pictures. We can even use it for logos of accrediting organizations or organizations that we are a part of. We're looking for something that has visual splash in that section. So it is a real downer to see a Word document that has no visual appeal at all. So I urge people not to put their resume there. But if you've got something that amplifies your brand visually, that's where that section really shines.
Okay, that's
Would you like another section?
Yeah. Can you give me another section? That'd be great.
Okay, the next feature that I think is just marvelous, and it is the feature that's called the pronouncer, the name pronouncer.
Yeah.
I don't think that they spend a lot of time naming that one, but it is a little speaker icon that shows up right by a person's name. Now, it doesn't happen very often because it's still a fairly new section and people don't know about it. But if your name is hard to pronounce, or if you're meeting someone whose name is hard to pronounce, it is fabulous. So the way that we get the speaker icon to show up by our name is we need to be on our phone app for LinkedIn. And only on the phone app can we create the recording. So if you were to use the speaker icon beside my name, you would hear me say, Carol Kemmerer, Carol
Yes.
Kemmerer. And that would be your cue that you would know how to pronounce my name when we meet.
Yes. And it's a fabulous feature. I spent some time with that this afternoon so that I could pronounce your name today. So it's invaluable. Excellent. For sure.
Yes.
Are there any other special features that we should know about?
Oh, let's see. There is a change in the skills section. And in the skills section, they now have just 3 skills that we can see before you hit the see more. And what that means to me is that LinkedIn is emphasizing in its algorithm the top 3 skills. And so this is a huge opportunity for us to telegraph what we really want to be known for by the first 3 skills that we pick.
That is a really good thing to know.
It is a significant change.
Mm-hmm. If someone had just 1 hour to update their LinkedIn profile, how should they spend that time?
I would say that they need to spend the first 15 minutes planning, because if you don't have a plan, your profile will not be any better than when you started. The architecture that I suggest is based on 3 branding questions that I always use with my executive clients. And so here are my 3 questions. What are the 3 things you want to be known for? Number 2, what are your differentiators? And number 3, what are your keywords? So if you know those things, you can write a great headline, which is just like your marketing billboard. It should be such a great statement. And most people have just used the LinkedIn default, which is your current title. But when we spend some time and we think about what are the 3 things we want to be known for, what are our differentiators, and what are our keywords, we have the ability to create very powerful headline within the 220 characters that we are allotted. So then they would also spend some time on their about section, because that is the section that we get to tell our business story in our own way. This is a section where we woo our ideal audience and win them over. That's a section that doesn't really write in less than an hour, but perhaps you can get a start. We need to also write that in the first person. And the third area that I would spend time on is making sure that your skills, at least the top 3, are providing that signal of what we want to be known for.
Right. So it goes back to the other, the skills section that we talked about, that the algorithms are picking up the first 3, right? The first top skills.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How did you get involved in personal branding? and LinkedIn.
So, yes. So I had been working in marketing communications for many, many years with a strong emphasis on brand. But of course, it was on company brand and product brand. When the company that I had been consulting for 20 years underwent an economic downturn, they outsourced the whole marketing communications function under a retained arrangement. And that meant that I could no longer do the work that I'd been doing for them. They'd already paid for it with someone else. And so I needed to understand how I could share my brand outside the company. And so I studied, I went to every seminar, webinar, read everything, and I began to find that there were some real keys to how we can express our brand powerfully and how it affects our results on a keyword search. While I was doing that, I was so excited that, this was something that I was learning about. I was sharing with all my friends who'd also lost their jobs.
Right.
And when they began to send me their friends, I realized that people were identifying me for a new area of subject matter expertise.
Excellent.
And that was the beginning.
And how did it blossom from there?
I think I was so surprised that everyone actually needed help with their LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn profiles as a whole are really poor. and people often identify that they'd like help. But I realized that if I were to work one-on-one intensively with someone, I would need to really respect that person and like them too. And so I found very quickly that the group that I was most effective with was the group that I'd been working with all my career, and that was senior level professionals. And so that's the area where I focused.
That's wonderful. So you talk about cultivating your connections on LinkedIn. And what do you mean, and how can we do that?
Cultivating connections is just like cultivating friendships, nurturing friendships. And it really is a matter of touches. Certainly, we can touch someone by calling them on the phone. We can touch someone by inviting them for coffee. But on LinkedIn, the touches are much more efficient. They have to do with things like endorsing their skills, sending them the notion that you are paying attention by liking and commenting on things that they've posted, sending them articles that that would be on brand for them, introducing them through LinkedIn to someone that that they would like to meet. And so, it's really not a mechanistic thing at all. It is, how can I advance this friendship? How can I change someone who's an acquaintance to a friend? How can I perhaps get them interested in what I could do for them as a sales? But we know that when we are trying to sell someone, we need to have a relationship. So it really is just relationship building.
Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful to do that business-wise. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Yes.
What's different about your second edition? The second edition book, what's different about it from the first edition?
The second edition book has all the material of the first edition, but I added some things. One of the things that I had in my first edition, and it's continued in the second edition, is a behavioral checklist at the end of the book, which allows you to either check out that, yes, you have read and understood and implemented those practices in your profile. You could use it, as an afterward thing to just check that you did that, or you can use it before you read the book to figure out which chapters you really need to read, where you have a knowledge gap. So that is the same. What is different in the second book is that I put at the end of each chapter some action steps. What should we actually be doing now that we have this information? How do we translate that into our profile? The other thing that's new with this second edition is that we have a whole new chapter for people who are in job transition, because the whole economy and business has changed so much during this pandemic and will continue to change as we go forward. And everyone who is seeking or who has a permanent full-time job still needs to have in their head that that job could go away as companies begin to rethink what business they should be in and what their workforce should look like. And so I think that this is a very unsettled time. And during this unsettled employment time, people have the opportunity to take control of their own personal brand. And when we take control, we planfully prepare what we want people to know about us. So I think those are some of the differentiators between last time's book and this time's book. And the other thing is I've added a section for people who are over 50, because age discrimination is alive and well, and we want to make sure that we are not sending out the signal that we are resistant to change. And there are some little cues that people pick up on that are in our power to control.
Mm-hmm. And people that are over 50 and have found themselves out of work, I would think that LinkedIn is a perfect profile to do exactly what you have done, Carol, is to take your strengths of when you were consulting for a big firm and turn that into a business yourself.
There are many, many people who are in this last chapter of their career, for instance, and there are so many people who can pivot, who recognize the things that they loved about their job and the things that they didn't like, and capitalize on how to have more of what makes you happy and less of what doesn't make you happy. So it is a very, very powerful tool. And when we're intentional, people receive the message that we intend.
Mm-hmm. But some people just aren't business people. They're workers, and there's some people that just wouldn't do that. Is that right, Carol? They wouldn't take that position and build that profile and start a new business like you did. I mean, it takes a lot of stamina. It takes a lot of guts to do that. And you really have to be self-disciplined to be your own boss.
Absolutely. You are correct about that. But there are people whose whole industries are damaged or changed or slow to come back, who need to be able to recognize that their skills are transferable to other industries. And so if you have good personal insight into what you do exceedingly well, think about the ways in which you could do that same thing for another sector of the economy. And that again can be very powerful when we emphasize our transferable skills.
Yes, exactly. Because a person might just be thinking about the company that they worked for and the product that they made or what they were about, and not realize that their skills can be used in another company, and they can still be successful. They might have to learn about terminology, which is real easy to do these days because we've got Google, and we can learn a lot of things about different companies and what they do. So you're able to grab that background knowledge really quickly. If you had somebody come to your LinkedIn profile that wanted to talk to you about your skills for their company, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things that I share when I'm speaking is that we are all bigger than the jobs that we hold.
Yes, wonderful.
When we lose our job, many of us think that we have lost ourselves, but that is not true. We still have those same skills. We still have those same passions that help us get up in the morning. We just need to find a different venue. And so when the person who is seeking a new venue realizes that they still possess all of those things that made them great in their former job, they can move on more effectively to find new areas in which to serve.
Mm-hmm. You really, people, and I know I do, I identify myself with what I do. And if what I do disappears, then people need to spend a lot of time recovering from that and reinventing themselves. But with the pandemic, Carol, it's not only about that part of it, but you've also are ripped out of a workplace where you saw people in the morning, you said hello, you had coffee with them, you might have had lunch with them. So there's a whole identity of yourself that is missing because of the interaction that you also had with your colleagues wherever you worked. And so it is a big deal, isn't it?
It is a big deal. You are right. It can take a lot of time to recover from a loss like that. It's like a death when you lose a job, especially if it's a job that you loved. And many people are experiencing that even without losing their jobs, just because in this pandemic time, they are missing all the things that you talked about in terms of interaction over coffee, opportunity for the casual lunch. That's not happening. But one of the things that many people don't realize is that LinkedIn is a place. LinkedIn is a place where you can see and be seen. LinkedIn is a way for us to engage with other people, even though we are not seeing them in a physical workspace. You can get that same kind of collegiality by being very active on the profile or on the platform. because the more active you are, the more you draw people to you that are paying attention. And we have the opportunity to discuss things, 3 and 4 sentences at a time, but it is a place, and it is a place for people who are looking for interaction. It's a different kind of place than the workplace, but it still can provide that sense of social connectedness. So it's a happy place for me.
It is. And, in meeting you and talking to you about LinkedIn, I've really warmed up to the platform. It's a great place. And it helps people that are in transition to reinvent themselves or continue to work the way they're working, but putting it out there to the masses in order for them to benefit, and also benefit other people's lives as well.
Absolutely.
I've loved talking about this. It's I've learned so much, and now I feel like I need to go and check over my LinkedIn profile and make sure that I'm doing everything correctly. So, what extraordinary discovery have you made in your life, Carol?
One of the biggest discoveries came from my loss of my consulting position with that Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
And it was that I was more than someone who could write effectively what someone else wanted to have written. I discovered that I had my own voice, that I could decide what was important to communicate, that I could have my own agenda of what to write about, what to talk about. I had spent 20 years writing presentations for other people to give, and I'd never given a one of them. Now, as a member of the National Speakers Association, I have that kind of voice as well, my writing voice and my speaking voice, and it all belongs to me. And that was my big discovery.
Oh my goodness. And when you're working and when you're writing speeches for other people, you just get lost in that. And when you lost your job because of the pandemic, you discovered that that's what you wanted to do for yourself. And I think that's so interesting, because it's not that you were unhappy writing those speeches and doing all those things. You loved what you did, but that was an incredible skill that you transferred over to what you're doing now. How exciting!
Yes, it was a real revelation to find that I didn't have to continue to feel less than because I'd lost my job. I could feel more than. And it was a great discovery.
And so, one of the things that I like to ask my guests are, do you feel that you were called? I mean, do you feel that your journey has led you to where you are now with a successful book in the business world? You're a speaker. Do you feel that you've been called to where you are right now? I don't mean in Hawaii. I'd like to be called to Hawaii. But I mean, but I mean
yes.
with, How do you feel that you've been called?
Yes, I absolutely do. And it actually started before my job loss. In 2008, with the economic downturn, I noticed a number of my senior executive friends lost their jobs. And 9 months later, when you would ask them what they were doing after their job loss, their response was, well, I guess I have retired.
Oh,
Now, these people were not old enough to retire. These people still had children that needed to go through college. These people still had mortgages to pay. These people were not ready to retire and had no intention to retire previously, but they were not getting any traction in the workplace. And what I discovered 3-some years later, when my position ended, was that the world of connecting with your next job was no longer associated with what color vellum you used for your resume.
right.
It was no longer what font shall we select. People who were continuing to look for jobs in that way were finding no traction at all because the world had moved on. And now people are looking for jobs, looking for people to fill their jobs on LinkedIn. They are sourcing and vetting their next hires through this platform. Even if they receive a perfectly lovely resume, if they're considering you, the next thing they do is they look at your LinkedIn profile. And I realized that people of that 50 plus age probably had no idea how to effectively use this platform. And that was the launch of my next chapter. Communicating to senior level people who had some maturity and tenure, how to make this essential business tool work for them.
Well, that is wonderful. That is exciting. How may people find you if they wanted to reach out to you, Carol?
Okay, so the key to finding me really is knowing how to spell my last name.
Yes.
Because once you know, I'm all over the place. You can find me on Google. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Amazon. So here is how to spell my name. It's K-A-E-M-M, like Mickey Mouse with 2 ears. E-R-E-R. Kemmerer.
Perfect.
K-E-M-M-E-R-E-R. And you can find me there on LinkedIn, and you can certainly find me on Amazon for my books. And you can find my articles by just Googling my name. So that's how.
Yes. And when you say your books, LinkedIn for the Savvy Executive and LinkedIn for the Savvy Executive, the second edition.
Yes.
Do you have another book in?
Both books. No, both books have their Kindle version. And I think you were going to ask me if I have another book in me.
I did. I was
it
going.
remains
I want
to
it.
be seen.
Okay.
It remains to be seen.
Okay. You're such a great teacher in writing a book like this and helping people. And so if they wanted to reach out to you, they would find you on LinkedIn if they wanted to hire your services.
Absolutely. That is a great way to find me. My website is carolkemmerer.com. So no spaces between the two names. And if they're looking for my material on LinkedIn, if they are on LinkedIn at the time, they can type the hashtag or # as we used to call it.
Yes.
And then type Carol Kemmerer, all as one word. And it will bring up a lot of my articles.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Carol. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned so much from you since I've met you, and even more during my interview. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining us.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure, Carol. This is Rhonda Grant with The Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day.
Thanks for tuning in to The Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.